Greetings and salutations, Geek Nation. This is Rob, and welcome back to Geek Culture Combat. And this week we got a special guest, Caleb, and we're going to be talking about Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, versus the good old classic Peter Parker Spider-Man. And I will be representing Batman Beyond, and Caleb will be representing Peter Parker Spider-Man. And before we get into that, let me go ahead and remind you to smash that notification bell, like, share, subscribe, and you put at the end of this, you put who you thought won the debate. And we're talking about between the characters, not between the advocates. We're talking about between the characters because we don't decide who won. We let you decide by putting it in the comment section down below. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. This is going to be Batman Beyond versus Spider-Man. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with Batman Beyond, which is Terry McGinnis. Now, this takes place in the future as far as Terry McGinnis. It takes place in the future. So Terry was born in Gotham City to Warren and Mary McGinnis, and they were research scientists at Wayne Powers and an astronomer and an astrotech relatively on all around August 18, 2023. So approximately 3-4 years after Batman was last seen. And by his own admission, he was a bad kid. Talking about Terry McGinnis. He was a bad kid. He got in with the wrong crowd. He was with with a street gang and a youthful racketeer, this dude named Charlie Big Time Bigelow. Okay. And so Terry was like a small time, criminal. And he even, had a couple of run-ins with the Gotham City Police Department at around age 14, and his parents were going through a divorce, which is why he was, running on the wrong side of the law there. And so he spent a little bit of time in juvenile hall. 20 years after Batman's disappearance from Gotham due to Bruce Wayne's retirement on account of failing heart problems, Terry finds himself on the run from the Jokers, which is another street gang, who have modeled themselves after the long dead Gotham City legendary criminal, of course, the Joker. And then Terry flees onto the grounds of Wayne Manor, where an aged Bruce comes to his defense, and together they subdue and ward off the Jokers. The strain of the fight places substantial stress on Bruce's weak heart, so Terry helps Bruce into the mansion and gets him his medicine. Bruce proceeds to fall asleep afterwards, and Terry attempts to leave, but Bruce's dog, Ace, stops him with hostility. He then tries to call his father, but then notices a bat stuck inside the grandfather clock. As he tries to free it, he stumbles upon the entrance to the Batcave and realizes that the elderly man was Gotham City's heroic Dark Knight. He is then forced out by an enraged Bruce. So we all know that a little bit later, he becomes Batman, the current Batman in this future timeline, with Bruce Wayne as his, I guess you can say, his Jarvis. So as far as abilities, Terry McGinnis has genius level intellect. He's a skilled martial artist and a street fighter and good hand-to-hand combatant, expert detective, and utilizes high-tech equipment and weapons. So with that, I am going to turn the mic over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about Spider-Man.
All right. So, we all know classic Spider-Man, right? So debuted in Amazing Fantasy 15, the comic book. This was back in 1962. Really kind of saved the Marvel comic industry, the character here. So Peter Parker, he was born in Queens to CIA agents, Richard and Mary Parker. They were eventually killed by Red Skull and framed for treason. Before their deaths, Richard and Mary actually, unbeknownst to a lot of people until later in the timeline, they had another child. But after their deaths, Peter then went to go live with his uncle and aunt, as we all know, Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Let's see here. He ended up, going to high school, a normal kid. He was 15 years old while attending a General Tektronix exhibition. 15-year-old Peter Parker was bitten on the hand by a spider, which was radioactive. By the demonstration's particle accelerator of the General Tektronix industry. And he was oblivious to this fact until later, and he realizes that he is developed into Spider-Man, the character that we all know and love. So a little bit about Spider-Man. So obviously he has adapted a lot of the particulars of a spider, so he can climb on any surface and stick to any surface. He's got superhuman strength, being able to easily handle over 10 tons as original Peter Parker Spider-Man. He's got above average intellect. He's got the spider sense, which is this kind of uncanny superhero-esque kind of reflexes and intuition. He's got web shooters, his classic, gadgets, and he has just the absolute best quippy wits when it comes to fighting. So that's Peter Parker in a very brief nutshell.
All right, appreciate it. No, it's very good, and thanks for telling us about the Peter Tingle that they refer to.
Oh, yeah.
So what I think what happened is this. Terry McGinnis, he actually comes from good stock because they were looking at some of his DNA, and he actually has some of Bruce Wayne's DNA. He did that early on. He came into the main DC continuity, and so he comes from really, really good stock. He was actually looking at it. I'm looking over here at some of the notes. He was actually looking at his genetic makeup there, and he found out that his DNA almost matches identically. So there's some cloning going on to Bruce Wayne. So we got to understand that this Terry McGinnis, this young man, he has one of the best fighters in the DC universe as his mentor, as his Miyagi, if you will. He's following the lines of what? Dick Grayson and Tim Drake and even Damian Wayne. So he's following a long line of some of the best fighters that the DC has to offer. So if you put together any top 10 list, DC fighters and everything, Batman will be right there. Okay, he will be right there in anybody's top 10 of the best fighters. And this is who is mentoring Terry. Okay, so we get into that and we understand that he's an expert hand-to-hand combatant. And then we have his bat suit. Okay, now this is more advanced tech. This is not the typical Batman suit, and it has more things to offer. Obviously he has his utility bat, but what does he has? He has batarangs, he has smoke bombs, he has stun. He's able to stun his opponents with electrical charges. He can fly and glide. His wings glide. He has rocket boots, and the suit augments his strength. Okay, so we've seen him being able to lift like a ton. And then he has all the gadgets. He has the entire Batman armory at his disposal. So I think your man, Peter Parker, is going to be overwhelmed. I think he's going to get overwhelmed. It's just too much for him to deal with.
Well, in my response to that would be, I think you were exactly right as far as Batman being top 10 DC fighters. Operative word is DC. Because Peter Parker, I mean, we're talking 10 tons of just raw natural strength at this point. Well, technically unnatural, but now natural to him as Spider-Man. 10 tons. 10 tons. McGinnis weighs 170 pounds. He's 5'10", so he's not overly tall. And, that's really not a lot of person to be fending off someone who can easily handle 10 tons. Plus with that, I mean, so you have all your tech, you have the stun, the stun smoke bombs and the electrical stun and all of that. Spider-Man also has electrical webs, so his suit is insulated to that. So that's not going to work on him. He has the Spidey sense, so any sort of sneak attack, the stealth, anything, I mean, Batman, he is the Dark Knight. So, I'm sure that's going to be part of their training repertoire is, catching someone off guard, being that stealth, attacker. It's not going to work on Peter Parker. He's got that spidey sense. He doesn't even have to see the danger for it to warn him. And then he can spin it on a dime. His tensile strength for his webs are able to hold up thousands and thousands of pounds. He's got, you want to talk about Miyagi's. He trained with the Avengers. He trained with S.H.I.E.L.D. He trained with teams from across, we're talking Inhumans, we're talking Fantastic Four, we're talking everybody Spider-Man's teamed up with and has learned from and adapted to. We're talking different worlds, we're talking underwater, we're talking in space, we're talking, different dimensions. This is just raw Peter Parker, and so if you want to break it down to who he's learning from, who's training him, who's in his corner, we can go on and on and on about, just his training alone, so I don't know. I think McGinnis is going to be a little bit surprised if he ever tried to, pick a fight with Pete.
So disrespectful. Talking about my man's stature like that. Well, I will have you know, sir, that yes, at first Terry will probably try to do some stealth attacks, and I agree with you that it probably won't work due to the spider sense. So he can be as stealthy as he wants, he won't be able to sneak up on him or sneak attack him. So I'll grant you that, okay? But I'll have you know the Batsuit conforms to the size and physique of the wearer, because we've seen that like first episode of Batman Beyond, first and second episode, and then it's able to fit both physically imposing Bruce or the significantly slimmer Terry, okay? It's form fitting with no reduction in flexibility, okay? While the musculature enhancement technology enhances the wearer's strength and also grants the wearer agility and endurance. Now, here's the interesting thing right here. This is going to be significant here. The material in the suit is resistant to massive concussive forces. In particular, it was able to take blows from Superman. It's fire resistant. It took blows from lasers, electric shock, water pressure, wind force, bullets, and even low levels of radiation. Okay, so he's going to be able to stand up to the punishment that Peter is going to try to put out. Now, we can both agree that these two will be probably fighting to incapacitate, because neither one of them really has the propensity of trying to kill. So this is going to be for a knockout, okay? And that's okay. But with this technology, with this particular suit, it's going to be hard for him to be able to knock him out and just keep him down for the count. Oh yeah, and by the way, not only was he trained by his mentor, the one and only Bruce Wayne, the very same Bruce Wayne is still in his ear serving as a Jarvis for tactical responses. So it's effectively a 2 against 1. I don't know if Peter can handle that, sir. I don't know.
All right, so you're talking about his suit sustainability. Mm-hmm. So it can withstand punches.
Yes.
Okay, a suit can withstand these punches.
Yes.
Okay. So that kind of negates his 10-ton, punches that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought up a very excellent point. Neither of these characters, a big part of their mantra is not taking life.
Correct.
So we're talking about subduing and, immobilizing.
Correct.
Spider-Man has webs.
Mm-hmm.
that have the strength. You mentioned earlier that Terry McGinnis, his strength is around about 1 ton with his suit.
Yeah.
The tensile strength of Peter Parker's webs would take larger than a ton of force to rip. We've seen it countless times. We've seen him sling cars with it, stop trains, hold up buildings. We're talking like this stuff is some serious, webbage. You know, it's going to take more than a ton of force to rip through that. All Peter's got to do, sling them up, web them up, and just kind of plaster them up against a wall or even to the ground. Terry McGinnis, he doesn't have to withstand hits. He's not strong enough to get pulled away, especially if he's webbed up real good. Even if he was webbed by one layer. If you start layering that on, what are you going to do?
Okay, it's interesting that you should say that, because you are right. The tensile strength of Peter's webs, okay, is remarkable. So much so that even Tony Stark was impressed. So I'll grant you that. However, we have seen through the years that the webbing is susceptible to sharp objects, so that it can be cut. And oh, by the way, the Batman Beyond suit does have talons in the fingers, and it also have razors on the forearms, razor sharp. Okay, so it can cut, and we've seen Peter Parker's webbing be cut on numerous occasions. So you're right. Terry does not have enough force. He doesn't have enough strength to break out of it, with, if you will. He wouldn't have enough strength. However, it's not about strength when it's about the sharpness of the blades or claws or talons that can tear through it. So I think he has a counter to that.
Yeah, I mean, the more and more you talk, I mean, if we're going to start introducing prep time, you know, obviously the circumstances of this fight, as far as, is there an attacker versus a defender? Are these guys just squaring up, like, you know, in a, you know, parking lot kind of thing? You know, what's the environment look like? Correct. You know, is there, you know, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? You know, so there's a lot of different things that could kind of go on here. But in my head, you know, it's very interesting. You know, obviously you really think of, oh, Spider-Man, obviously, you know, but it's really interesting that, you know, the more and more you kind of peel apart things, like, you really see them being very similar in attributes, or even defenses and offenses. And then obviously, you know, we could go into prep time, and we could go into, oh, you know, Spider-Man could develop, you know, this or that, or, you know, okay, so Spider-Man could develop, you know, slash resistant webbing, or he could develop, you know, he could adopt another one of his suits, and, you know, yada yada yada, you know. But it's very interesting to kind of see and break down and say, okay, look at these strengths, look at these defenses. You know, it definitely wouldn't be one-sided, you know, and that's very interesting, because I think Batman Beyond is definitely one of those characters that does not get a lot of limelight.
Correct.
Because of, you know, he's lesser known. He's a kid. You know, it's just it doesn't have the same kind of, like, power draw that, like, the Dark Knight does.
Correct.
But I think one of the big things is that even though Spider-Man, I still think, would be able to get the upper hand, it would definitely not be a one-sided, you know, wipeout kind of thing. You know.
Right.
So I think it's very, very interesting. I still think with the spider sense, the clearly superior strength and flexibility, agility of Spider-Man, I still think he would have the upper hand, whether through stamina. You know, Terry McGinnis, he's a kid. He's a teenager. He's going to get tired eventually.
Right.
You know, if we talk about, okay, this is like, you know, we talked about all the defenses and the offenses. This is not going to be a short fight. You know, this is going to be a pretty drawn-out bout. Peter Parker is a superhuman. He has all of that stamina. He has that super strength that's really not going to go anywhere. Terry McGinnis is a kid in a suit who's going to get tired. He's going to get beat up, even though his suit can take that punishment. There's still just a kid in the suit, you know? And yeah, he's got the Dark Knight in his ear, but there's only one body there. Two minds, one body. That one body's taking all of the punishment, you know? So is that stamina going to be able to hold up? I personally don't think so. I think after after a good long fight, Peter Parker's going to win on top because he's just going to keep being able to go and go and go. And
Okay.
his suit, think about it. Peter Parker, it's not his suit. It's him that's with, being able to take all of that punishment. He's Spider-Man. You could punch him into the sun, and you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I think stamina is going to be the ultimate deciding factor here.
Okay. So you're talking about it'll more or less be a war of attrition. Okay. The thing is, one thing that Terry has to know, as well as Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne's been doing it for a long time, and then we being human, we are keenly aware that we're going to get tired soon. Okay. And when they're taking down bad guys, they know they cannot take this thing the distance. They cannot just keep going the distance, because you're right. At some point, you are going to get tired. Now, the suit aids you in that, it makes it makes him a little, obviously a lot more durable, but it makes him a little faster, a little stronger, a little more agile and things like that. But again, he is still expending energy. So I do understand that. Now, if they go along, if they kind of go the distance, like you're saying, if they're fighting for a while, then yeah, I can see Peter Parker outlasting him because he is a superhuman. However, with Terry and Bruce Wayne being keenly aware that, hey, I'm a human, I'm getting tired here, we have got to put this person down. And I will say this, when they go against villains, right, and say it's just a big imposing villain or someone that it's obvious that this person has abilities, whether it's a Bane or a Clayface or a Killer Croc or something like that, anyone that actually has some sort of ability, they always try to subdue quickly because these people are powerful. They may toy with the petty thugs and the little street gangs and things like that, but when it comes to these larger, more powerful, more imposing foes, they try to finish it as fast as possible because they know, being human, they cannot go the distance. If you try to go distance against a powerhouse, and that's going to be seen really quick. Just one punch from Spider-Man, because that's up to 20 tons worth of force. Not that Spider-Man, uses that, as soon as he comes out in the fight, he kind of feels the person out a little bit because he's not trying to kill him. But it's not going to take much for Terry to absorb one punch, into the suit, absorb one punch to say, hey, this dude is strong. Okay, it's not going to take him that long. And even if he doesn't get hit, if he just see him do something, if he hurls a car or something or anything like that, it's going to be like, okay, this guy's strong. So he's going to have to try to make quick work of him. And with Bruce Wayne in his ear, that's a lot of experience saying, hey, look, okay, this is what we have to do. We have to subdue this guy. We have to take him out. Let's see if shocking him or stunning him will work. If that doesn't work, we're going to try some other things, whatever the case may be. Disorient him, because look, all the things that are there in the utility bay, it's integrated into the suit. It carries tracers, flash and smoke pellets, extinguisher capsules, flexi cups, okay, a detachable buzz saw in the buckle, okay, retractable claws that I said, on the fingers and stuff like that can cut through various objects. Obviously, it has he can actually crawl along surfaces and stuff like that, much like Spider-Man, but not to Spider-Man's level, but he can adhere to surfaces and stuff like that. His grappling hooks, things like that. So he has a lot of devices, a lot of things at his disposal. And if one of the things that we know is that as far as tactics, Batman is bar none one of the best tacticians in all of DC Comics. This guy is, the Justice League defer to this guy, okay, when it comes to tactics. This guy, and this is who Terry has in his ear, basically his biological father, because they said their DNA matches almost identically. His biological father is in his ear telling him what needs to be done from all these years of experience of going against people above his class, his whole life being the only regular human besides Green Arrow on the Justice League. And one of the top 3. And this is the guy, this is the same mentor that Terry has in his ear. And this is the same guy, armory, that Terry has at his disposal. And I'm just talking about the suit. I didn't even get into all the other stuff. I'm not going to bring in the Batwing, Batmobile. I'm not getting into all. I'm just talking about just the suit and the utilities that are on the suit. That's it. I use Bruce Wayne because he's typically in his ear. So I'm using what's common, so he's commonly in his ear. So I'm just using those things. So you're talking about a guy with a ton of experience of going against someone who is outside his class. So he's going to find out real fast that Spider-Man is no joke, no slouch. He's going to see how agile he is, jumping around, how strong he is, how stealth technology doesn't work. It's not going to be too hard to figure that out because he'll try something in stealth and it just won't work, So he said, okay, so here's what we're dealing with. They have to have a tactical analysis as things go along, but at the same time realizing we can't spend all day with this guy. This guy has got to be taken down quickly.
See, and here we go again. So we got Bruce Wayne in the ear, right? Okay, yep. Yeah. I'll give it to you. He's a great fighter in DC. It's when you match it up against the repertoire that Spider-Man has trained with, fought alongside of, learned against. I mean, we're talking about the X-Men. We're talking about the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the Inhumans. We're talking about the rest of the Spider-Verse. We're talking about symbiotes. We're like, the list goes on and on. Like Batman, okay, Batman's great, but you put that up against all the people I just mentioned. I don't know if having him in your ears is gonna match up against all of that experience of fighting, all of that experience of team ups, and exactly like you said, feeling out an opponent, and kind of testing their strength, seeing where they're weakest, seeing where they're going to overextend themselves. And I think a big thing that we've kind of overlooked here is with protagonists, the biggest thing that drives them, whether it's comics or the movies or the cartoons, the animated features, the biggest thing with protagonists is they have a drive, they have a reason. Peter Parker and Terry McGinnis, depending on what their reasoning is, that goes into a lot of why they fight and who they fight. So I think that is also something that has to be put into play here. That's a big reason. I mean, we're talking about 2 characters who both go up against, some pretty overwhelming odds sometimes.
Sure.
Because they need to, because something needs to happen. Someone needs to be saved. There's, wrong that needs to be, put to justice. So the motivation behind the action is huge with both of these. But I think Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man still takes that one as well. I mean, we're talking about, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We're talking about the person who, it doesn't matter if it's like a cosmic being trying to eat the earth, or if it's a bank robber, he takes it all on, and it's someone who's, who is not a perfect being, but someone that strives to be. I mean, we talked about how Terry McGinnis, he was a troubled kid a lot. He was not perfect. He's, had a lot of screw-ups so early in his life, which is fine. Everyone has a past. But we're talking about Peter Parker. We're talking about someone who's charged by his dying uncle to have that responsibility, to have that drive, to help people that couldn't help themselves. I don't think Terry McGinnis has that. I don't think he has that purpose. I don't think he has that strength of will that is necessary, in a situation like this, depending on, what happened to lead them to fighting. I mean, you got to think, we're talking about Spider-Man. Spider-Man, he is the ultimate friendly. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is the protector, you know, and like I said, I think once again, his heart and mind and the drive, I think he takes the cake in this one, you know? I think he has that, you know, that drive. He has that propensity for, you know, righting the wrong and protecting those who need to be protected. He has that repertoire. He has that. And he has that charge from his, you know, beloved dying uncle, you know? So I think that's something that, once again, I mean, we're talking about body, we're talking about strength in this. What about strength of mind? What about that kind of stamina? Peter Parker's got it. He's got it, you know, and he's got, you know, many, many, many instances of, once again, going up cosmic beings versus like bank robbers. I mean, he does it all because he needs to do right. He needs to right the wrong. And that's all that he's about. That's his big thing. So I think even in that case, I think Spider-Man Peter Parker has it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, my final closing statement, and then if you'd like, you have a closing statement. My final closing statement is I do believe it's going to come down to motivation. It's going like as you said, you know, to further your point, I do think it's going to come down to motivation, the circumstances, the environment. Okay, obviously for the listening audience, this particular battle is not with prep time, but you know, maybe future battles we can do certain battles, you know, with prep time. This one was not with prep time, and then, you know, it could be in a cityscape. You know, both of them, they do well, you know, in a cityscape, so that's fine as well. So yeah, it's going to come down to the motivation. You know, what are they fighting for in the first place? Why are they fighting in the first place? You know, is it something on Peter Parker's side? Is it something on Terry's side? Is there a misunderstanding? Is it a loved one in danger? Is there some, you know, that sort of thing? Just it's one of those misunderstandings to where, you know, they don't know each other, and then they have to go at it. Okay, so at the end of the day, I think if we consider the reason that they're fighting, okay, if we're considering the reason, like for example, I'm just throwing out an example. Like Terry has a younger sibling that he looks after, you know, and then his mother and stuff like that. If it's something like, you know, his mother or his younger sibling, they're in danger or something, and then he feels like, you know, that Spider-Man had something to do with it, okay, he's gonna fight with a different resolve. That's gonna be, you know, like I said, we didn't put the scenario out there. I'm just saying, just give an example of the level of motivation and will, kind of like you were saying with Peter Parker. You know, he's fought the common thug, the bank robbers, and then he's went up to just people way above his class, but he still had to, you know, fight. So that's the thing that I'm talking about with Terry. What's the motivation there? So it's really gonna come down, you know, to that. And I think that Terry would have the resolve. You know, if it's something this person needs to be taken down for whatever the reason may be, if he sees Spider-Man as a threat and Spider-Man needs to be taken down, I think he has the equipment to do it. I think he has the will. I think he has the equipment to do it. The wherewithal, we're gonna have to leave that up to the audience, and leave it up to their imagination. It just really it comes down to, does he have the motivation, and does he have the tools to get the job done? I think he has the tool to get the job done. Any closing statements?
Yeah, I mean, I think once again we kind of have to boil it down to, does Terry McGinnis, does he have the stamina to withstand a superhuman? Does he does having Batman in his ear, is that enough? Having Bruce in his ear, is that gonna be enough? So I'm talking physical stamina, and I'm talking, we've seen in comics what happens to Bruce Wayne's sidekicks. It's not pretty.
Low blow.
It's not low. I mean, we're talking about people that have the same gear, the same motivation, the same person in their ear as Terry McGinnis, and it doesn't end well with them. So I have to say, I'm looking at a track record here. That's fair. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at other people that have the same gear, other people that have Bruce Wayne in their ear, telling them this, telling them that, giving them tips and training them, and it does not look pretty for them later on down the road. So,
sir.
I gotta say, Spider-Man's got it, man. I think he's got the motivation. I think he's got the heart. I think he's got the brain. He definitely has the physical ability, and I think he's also going to be talking to Terry, and
Caleb, you are talking filthy right now. That is cold. Okay, I see. Okay, I see what you're doing. He laid down his arguments, and I have laid down my arguments. But the decision is up to you guys, the listening audience. Please let us know who do you have winning down in the comment section below. It is Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, or Peter Parker Spider-Man. Who do you think would win in a battle? But it's up to you to decide. Sound off in the comment section below. Before you go, hit the notification bell. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next Geek Culture Combat.